another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer. Beautiful view.
The moon landing may have given America its greatest victory, but it also left behind one of NASA's strangest unfinished sentences. Buzz Aldrin did not just walk on the lunar surface, salute the flag, and return home with a few heroic memories. He and the Apollo 11 crew also reported seeing things that did not come with neat little explanations. A strange object seemed to follow them during the flight. A bright light near the lunar horizon raised eyebrows. Other Apollo astronauts described flashes, particles, and odd sights in the blackness where nothing should have been moving at all. NASA has always had explanations for pieces of the story, and some of them may be perfectly reasonable. But with UFOs back in Washington, old files being re-examined, and the government still sounding careful with its wording, the mystery feels alive again. Before we start, drop a comment below. Tell us what you think Buzz really saw. Space debris, a reflection, or something NASA still has not fully explained. Because this is the story of what Buzz Aldrin really saw on the moon and why some believe NASA kept the strangest parts quiet for nearly 57 years. The Quiet File.
Anyway, we're getting ready to go to bed, and I'm looking out the window, and I see a light moving at a distance, some distance, against the star background. And of course, the stars are not moving, they're inertial space.
Sure.
So we decided we would just calmly ask Houston where the upper stage was. So we asked them, where is the S4B? How far away is it? And they didn't know immediately, but they had to check with the back room who keep track of all these trajectories. And so several minutes later, Houston came back, Apollo 11, the S4B is about 6,000 miles away.
So that couldn't be
I figured that was not what I was looking at.
Right.
The strange part isn't that Apollo astronauts saw odd things. Spaceflight is full of odd things. The strange part is that some of those sightings were buried in technical language, filed away in crew debriefings, and only later treated like pieces of a UFO mystery. In the Apollo 11 debrief, Aldrin described a bright object seen during the trip. The crew had already separated from the SIVB rocket stage, so they asked Houston where it was. The answer made the easy explanation less satisfying. The booster was thousands of miles away. Through a monocular, the object seemed to have an L shape. Armstrong compared it to an open suitcase. Aldrin said it looked close enough and large enough to get their attention, though Armstrong added an important warning. Without knowing the range, nobody could know its true size. That's the uncomfortable middle ground. The crew saw something real enough to discuss, but not clear enough to identify. For UFO believers, that's the opening. For skeptics, it's exactly how space debris, panels, reflections, and optical confusion become legends. The light.
That's why when somebody asked me on Apollo 11, did you see anything unusual? I got to be honest about it and either say, well, it's a detail, but we saw nothing other than something that we were 99.99% was a man-made object that was part of the spacecraft, but we did happen to see it, and according to the technical definition of unidentified flying object, it has to fit in that category.
The moon story gets stranger after the landing. Aldrin later described seeing what appeared to be a fairly bright light source when Earth rose above the lunar horizon. At first, the crew considered whether it could have been a possible laser. That detail is pure catnip for conspiracy circles. A laser from Earth, spotted from lunar orbit, sounds like secret tracking, hidden experiments, or someone on the ground signaling the astronauts. It feels like a scene from a Cold War thriller. But Aldrin himself offered a less exotic possibility. On the return trip, the crew saw a similar kind of light near Earth and concluded it might have been sunlight reflecting off a smooth body of water, maybe a lake. He still called it unusual at that distance. That's what makes the story work without turning it into nonsense. The eerie version is tempting, but the careful version is still interesting. Aldrin did not say alien beacon. He said unusual light, possible laser, then probably reflection. Cabin flashes.
Trip of ours to the moon may have looked to you simple or easy. I'd like to assure you that has not been the case.
Hey, I just saw a flash on the lunar surface. It was a bright little flash right out there near that crater.
There were also flashes inside the spacecraft. Astronauts on Apollo missions reported tiny bursts of light, sometimes with their eyes closed. These flashes became one of the stranger physical experiences of deep space travel. At the time, it was not fully understood by the public. Later, scientists connected many of these flashes to cosmic rays passing through the eye or visual system. That explanation may be neutral, but imagine being inside a metal capsule halfway to the moon, watching sparks appear in darkness. For a viewer, that sounds supernatural. For an astronaut, it was another unknown to report calmly. That contrast matters. The men were trained not to panic and to not embellish. Yet they still noticed events that did not fit ordinary earthbound experience. This is where the government's tone becomes part of the mystery. If officials explain too little, people assume they're hiding something. If they explain too much, people assume they're cleaning up a story. Apollo lived right inside that suspicion. Apollo was not alone.
This image was taken during a lunar excursion on Apollo 17. And in this image, you see a moonscape, but you see something else. Up here in the corner is a really odd 3-dot object. We don't know what it is.
Apollo 11 wasn't the only mission with strange visual reports. Apollo 12 and Apollo 17 materials include odd lights, particles, and images later highlighted in the UAP files. Some photos show dots or bright areas in the black lunar sky. That doesn't automatically mean spacecraft from another world. Cameras in space can produce artifacts. Dust, scratches, processing issues, reflections, lens effects, and tiny particles can all look dramatic when boxed and labeled. Still, the pattern is why people keep paying attention. These were not random campers in a field. These were astronauts, military pilots, engineers, and scientists working during the most documented space program in history. The government now calls many of these cases unresolved because there's not enough data. That sounds honest, but it also sounds evasive. Unresolved is a tiny word with a giant shadow. It tells you the file is not closed, but it does not tell you what's inside the room. The disclosure problem.
Due to my extensive executive-level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
The 2026 file release poured gasoline on an old fire. The Pentagon framed the release as transparency, while critics quickly pointed out that some Apollo materials had been available for decades. So was it a revelation, a repackaging, or a public relations stunt? That confusion is part of why UFO stories thrive. The public hears declassified and imagines a vault cracking open. Then experts say, hold on, much of this was already out there. Both things can be partly true if old records are being gathered, highlighted, and recategorized under the modern UAP umbrella. NASA's official position remains cautious. UAP are real in the simple sense that people report things they cannot identify. But NASA says there's no credible evidence that these sightings prove alien technology. That's the sober counterweight. But the sober answer does not erase the public's distrust. When astronauts describe odd objects, bright lights, and unexplained visual effects, people want more than a shrug. Aldrin may not have seen aliens, but he saw enough for the questions to survive. What was hidden?
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know,
The aliens are real.
well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
Well, if the president can declassify anything that he wants to, so
Maybe I'll get him out of trouble. I may get him out of trouble by declassifying. We know illegal aliens are real. Yeah, illegal. Only illegals.
So what did NASA really hide? Maybe not a crashed saucer. Maybe not moon aliens watching from a crater. The more believable answer is that NASA let ambiguity stay wrapped in technical paperwork where the average person would never look. That's not as explosive as a secret alien base, but it still feels like kind of a concealment. The public got the heroic version of Apollo, not the messy version filled with strange lights, uncertain sightings, and astronauts trying to describe things at the edge of human experience. Aldrin's accounts don't prove a cover-up. They prove that even the most famous mission in history had loose threads. In a world where UFO hearings, whistleblower claims, and government file drops kept feeding suspicion, those threads now look more important than they once did. The truth may be ordinary. It may be debris, reflection, radiation, and distance playing tricks on brilliant men under impossible conditions. But when the official story leaves gaps for nearly 57 years, people will fill those gaps with whatever they fear, hope, or suspect. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Buzz Aldrin saw something ordinary that later got blown into a UFO legend? Or has the government been careful to keep the strangest parts of Apollo out of the spotlight? Let us know in the comments section below.
Apollo 11, signing off.